My wife said it's all in your head, but the heartfelt letters she wrote him proved me wrong. I stood there, holding the envelope in my shaking hands, unable to believe what I was seeing. My heart pounded in my chest, my throat tight as I read the name on the front of the letter. James, the same name I had heard her mention a few times, always in passing, always brushed off with a smile, as if he was just some co-worker. But now, here I was, staring at the proof. The thing I had never wanted to find. I couldn't breathe. I had been suspecting something for a while now. There were little things, small, almost unnoticeable changes. The way she'd started staying out later at work, her phone always face down when she was home, the awkwardness when I tried to hold her hand. It wasn't a big shift, just a gradual slipping away. At first, I told myself it was all in my head. She was stressed with work, or maybe it was just a rough patch. But then I started finding things, little signs that felt like they didn't belong in the life we'd built together. It wasn't until that morning, though, that I found something I couldn't ignore. She had left her email open on the kitchen counter when she left for work, and, at first, I only meant to glance at the weather. But my eyes landed on something that made my stomach drop, a thread of emails between her and James. I don't even know why I kept reading, but once I did, I couldn't stop. The words, the tone, the way she spoke to him, it wasn't just friendly banter. It was intimate, personal, like they were sharing something I wasn't a part of. I felt like I was suffocating, but I pushed that feeling down. I closed the laptop, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe it's nothing, I thought. Maybe I'm just paranoid. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I lay in bed, my mind racing with all the questions I didn't have answers to. When she came to bed, she kissed me on the cheek and turned away without another word. That's when I noticed it. The small, square envelope tucked inside her purse, hidden under a pile of receipts. I didn't want to go through it. I told myself I wouldn't. But in the silence of the room, my curiosity overtook me. And that's when I found it. The letter. I ripped open the envelope in a haze of disbelief. The handwriting was unmistakable, her delicate, looping script that I'd seen 100 times. My hands were trembling as I unfolded the paper, and I felt my heart break all over again as I began to read. James, I don't know what to say. The last few weeks have been so hard, and I don't know if I can keep pretending like everything is okay. I think about you all the time. I've never felt this way before, and it scares me. I know I've made promises, but I need you to know that I'm not happy. I don't want to hurt him, but I can't keep doing this. I'm falling for you, and I don't know how to stop. Please don't give up on me. I couldn't read anymore. My vision blurred with tears, and I felt like I was going to fall to my knees. Everything I thought I knew about her, everything I thought I had with her, it was all crumbling in my hands. I didn't want to believe it. But here was the proof. The letters. The confessions. She was in love with him. She'd been lying to me, telling me everything was fine, that I was the problem, that I was just too stressed or overthinking things. I didn't know how to breathe. The weight of the betrayal crushed me, every word of the letter a dagger to my chest. When she came home that evening, I had every intention of confronting her. But the moment she walked through the door, I froze. The sight of her, the woman I loved, the woman I had shared my life with, felt like a stranger. I was suffocating, and yet I couldn't speak. She walked past me, her eyes scanning the room for a moment. "Hey, babe, I'm home," she said, her voice too light, too casual, as if nothing had changed, as if everything was still the same. I don't know what I expected to happen. Maybe I wanted her to confess, to say it was all true, to tell me the truth. Or maybe I just wanted to hold on to the illusion that I was still the most important person in her life. But I couldn't bring myself to say anything. She caught me staring at her, my face blank, the letters still burning a hole in my pocket. "What's wrong?" Her tone was softer now, but there was a distance in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I could see her trying to hold it together, her unease creeping through the cracks of her calm facade. I couldn't take it. I walked over to the table, grabbed the envelope, and shoved it in her hands without a word. For a long moment, she just stared at it, and I could see her mind racing, the guilt in her eyes obvious. Slowly, her fingers opened the envelope. She pulled out the letter, her expression shifting from confusion to realization. The color drained from her face as she read the words. And for the first time in what felt like years, she didn't look at me like I was just someone she could brush off. I can explain, she whispered, her voice trembling. But I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear the excuses, the justifications. No, I said, my voice cracking. There's nothing to explain. You're in love with him, aren't you? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She opened her mouth again, but her words were lost in the weight of everything she had just confirmed. The silence between us was unbearable. You told me it was all in my head. I continued, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. You told me I was overthinking things, that I was imagining it. But here it is. Your heart. Your words. You've been planning a future with him, haven't you? She looked down at the letter, then back at me, her face pale. Jake, I didn't want to hurt you. Too late for that. I spat out, my chest tight with emotion. You've been lying to me this whole time, pretending like nothing was happening. You're telling me you're in love with him, and I have to just accept it. She reached for me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. No, no more. I can't do this anymore. I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't know how long we stood there in the silence. It felt like hours. She didn't try to say anything else, didn't try to justify it anymore. She just stood there, eyes full of regret, but it didn't change anything. The woman I had built my life with was gone. And in her place was someone who had been living a lie, telling me one thing while secretly planning a future with someone else. I didn't know what to do. I felt like the world was spinning too fast, and all I could do was hold on to the truth in my hands, the cold, hard proof of her betrayal, the love letters she wrote to him, the promises she'd made to him that she'd never made to me. It was over, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. Part 2. I spent the next few days in a haze. I barely slept, barely ate, just existing in a fog of disbelief and heartbreak. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of her holding that letter haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about the words she had written, how she had poured her heart out to him. And all the while, I had been living a lie, thinking everything was okay, that we were fine, that she was still my wife. I moved through the motions, dealing with work and the basics of life, but it felt like I was living in someone else's body. My mind kept replaying that moment when I had confronted her, when I had held the evidence of her betrayal in my hands. Her face. The mix of guilt, confusion, and regret kept coming back to me. I didn't know if she regretted what she'd done to me, or if she just regretted getting caught. Either way, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. We didn't speak much after that. She spent the next few days in and out of the house, packing up her things, sorting through the mess of our life together. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping. Hoping that somehow we'd talk through this, that maybe, just maybe, she would apologize and we could fix things. But every time I looked at her, I felt nothing but anger and betrayal. The woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had shattered it in the most brutal way possible. I don't think she wanted to leave. I could see it in her eyes, the same confusion I felt reflected back at me. But the fact was, she was already gone, emotionally, long before that letter surfaced. She had already checked out, already given her heart to someone else. And I was just the last person to know. One afternoon, as she packed more of her things, I found myself standing in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her silently fold clothes into a suitcase. She didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my presence. For the first time in our entire relationship, it felt like I was invisible to her. She was there physically, but emotionally, she was already miles away. I think it's time for me to go, she said, her voice quiet, as though she were speaking to herself more than to me. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. If I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure I could control the torrent of emotion that would pour out. Anger, hurt, confusion, it was all there just beneath the surface. Her hand trembled as she zipped up her suitcase. I'm sorry, Jake, she said, finally looking up at me. Her eyes were red, but there were no tears left to cry. I really am. Sorry. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Is that what you're going to say? Sorry? That's it. She flinched, the hurt in her eyes more than I could handle. What do you want me to say, Jake? Do you want me to tell you how sorry I am that I hurt you? How much I regret everything? It won't change anything. It doesn't undo what I've done. I stared at her, feeling like I was suffocating. I didn't know what to say, what to feel. I wanted to scream at her, to ask how she could do this to me. But somehow, I couldn't find the words. All I felt was the numb ache in my chest, a deep sense of betrayal that I couldn't escape. You should go, I said, the words barely audible. I don't want you here anymore. Not like this. She nodded, her shoulders slumping, and without another word, she turned and walked out of the room, carrying the suitcase with her. I stood frozen, unable to move, watching her leave. The sound of the front door closing behind her felt like the final nail in the coffin. It was over. She was gone. I was left alone with the shattered pieces of my heart. The next few weeks were a blur. I stayed in the house, still surrounded by the remnants of our life together. Photos, clothes, pieces of furniture that now felt like they belonged to someone else. I couldn't bring myself to pack up her things, to throw them away. It felt like I was letting go of her all over again. I just kept hoping she would come back, that this was some kind of nightmare, and I would wake up and everything would be fine. But that wasn't how it worked. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me it was her. I hesitated before answering, but I picked it up anyway. Jake. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. I sat up straighter, heart racing. What do you want? There was a long pause before she spoke again. I need to talk to you. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. About what, exactly? How you're in love with him. How you spent months lying to me, making me believe everything was fine while you were planning a future with someone else. I could hear her breath hitch on the other end of the line. Jake, please. Let me explain. No, there's nothing to explain. You made your choice. The words burned in my mouth, but I didn't care anymore. I'm done. I don't want to hear it. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I really am. I never meant for it to happen. But I was done. Done listening. Done pretending like there was any more to salvage. She had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. I didn't know her anything. I need to go, I said, cutting her off. Goodbye. I hung up the phone before she could say anything else. The next few weeks were rough, to say the least. I avoided her messages, didn't return her calls, and focused on putting the pieces of my life back together. It wasn't easy. I spent a lot of time with friends, with family, trying to distract myself from the pain. But I couldn't escape it. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a man who had been betrayed. A man who had given everything to someone who didn't value it. Eventually, I moved out of the house. It was too much, living in a place where all the memories of her still lingered. I rented a small apartment in a quieter part of town and spent my days working, trying to rebuild. But no matter how many distractions I found, I couldn't erase the memory of her, of how she'd lied to me, how she'd used me while secretly falling for someone else. The betrayal still stung, deep in my bones, but slowly I started to heal. Slowly, I started to realize that I was better off without her. She was no longer the woman I had married, and I was no longer the man I was when I had loved her. And that was okay, because I would be fine.